Okay, I'm a little bit behind actually. Got to talking and wasn't paying attention. We are going to be in Numbers chapter 22 tonight. I'm not going to run through the prayer list. I do have one update I want to give. I was given tonight. Gene has been listed in the bulletin for, 8 weeks. 8 weeks is going through cancer treatments, and he has now completed those treatments. So we're thankful for that. And he will have a test to see his current status in January, and then they'll determine where to go from that point forward. But we're certainly thankful that those have been completed. Also, I do want to make sure and announce the continuation of the baskets for Thanksgiving. We have several baskets that we're planning to make. Do you have enough names yet? Okay, and where our goal is, what, 15 or more? Okay, so we have 6 names. So if you know of more of those who are in need for Thanksgiving, if we get 6, that's what we're going to do. But we'll certainly do more and would like to do more. So if you have other names, get those to Debbie or Casey, and we need to be bringing supplies. Do you have a list? I've been gone. Okay. Okay, so there will be a list of needed supplies in the bulletin. I guess I should also say I'm glad to be back home. I actually have been home for a week, but I hid for the first 4 or 5 days because I was still on vacation. So now I have to show up again. I'm certainly thankful, Patrick. I was able to join for worship because we didn't have a congregation close to us. We were in Oregon, and we were able to join for worship. And appreciate Rich's work. He's not in here, but I'll say it anyway. And then, of course, we were able to do the Wednesday night classes with Patrick, and I certainly appreciate those. It was like being in. It was like continuation of the notes I had, so it really felt encouraging. He didn't even know I was gone. He didn't know I was on vacation. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't have recognized me. I didn't shave for a week, so. Okay. Anything else? All right. Steve will lead us in prayer, and then we'll get started. Okay, by the way, this microphone we've been having trouble with for weeks cutting out. I think we may have figured it out. So tonight, if we don't cut out, that's going to be an awesome thing to finally figure out that simple little thing. Numbers chapter 22. I don't know how I got off schedule, but I am a little off schedule for tonight. My schedule is different than the one I printed out. And I guess that's how it happened. But so what that does is that benefits me because I don't have to cover as much material tonight as was originally on the schedule. So we'll just go as far as we go tonight, and then we'll be done. But I love this account. If you've been preparing or studying ahead for tonight's class, you already know where we're going. I love this account, and one of the reasons that I really love this account is because I tried to relate to the characters in each one of these accounts so that I can understand what they would be thinking and feeling and all of that. And this one is this is one of the few characters in the Bible that are more stubborn than I am. So I was going to say this is one of the few characters in the Bible more stubborn than my wife, but I figured that would get me in trouble, so I'll just say more stubborn than me. I don't have to say that. Yeah, we don't have to say that at all. So, but Patrick did hit a little bit on what was coming in tonight's class last Wednesday night. And let me kind of review just a little bit to bring us up, and I don't want to cover all of it, but, we really jumped ahead while I was away, right? We went from the time at Kadesh Barnea where the spies have been sent into the land, and they come back and say, yes, it's exactly what God said it was, but it's also more. They've got these giants and these fortified cities, and we can't take it. We can't take the land. It's too difficult. And so God told them the consequence of that is you're going to go back out in the wilderness, and you're going to wander around 1 year for every day that the spies were in the land until everybody 20 years old and above dies. And so as I left from my trip, that's kind of where we were. They tried to go, no, we'll go take it. So they tried to go in and take it, and they lost, right? And God said, no, you're going to go back out in the wilderness. And they did. And by the time I came back, well, we're 38 years later. We're in the 40th year. And in the meantime, some events, some highlights, I guess, in that period were things such as the death of Miriam, which is Moses' older sister. And I know there's not that many things in the account about Miriam and what happens along the way, but if you consider where Moses began, you have to understand that there was a significant relationship with Miriam, right? Because she was the one that watched over him when his mother placed him in that basket, which means she had to be involved before that, right? She was also the one that went to Pharaoh's daughter and told her that she would go find an Israelite woman to nurse this child, and then she went and got his own mother, right? So there obviously is a significant relationship with his older sister, and she's died in the wilderness. And by the way, that happens right before all of a sudden they start complaining about not having any water. And God told Moses to go speak to the rock. And remember, he got so angry with them for their murmuring that he strikes the rock. And then both he and Aaron would end up losing their life before they go into the promised land, and it's connected back to what happened there. Reason I highlight that Miriam's death happened at that point is sometimes we're at our most vulnerable when tragedy has been around, right? I mean, think about it. And I know I use this a lot, but that's because part of illustrating things from lessons and classes has to do with what's happening currently in our society, because that's what's on our mind. But have you found 2020 easier to be kind? Easier to be patient, easier to be understanding of other people? Has this year made it easier to do that or harder? It's harder, right? The more pressure we have on us, the more stress we have, the more we tend to struggle, in the way that we relate to other people. And even in our own patience and our own tempers. And so I have no doubt that somehow came into play with some of what happened with Moses and even Aaron as they were dealing with the grief of the loss of their sister. But they did sin. They did sin. They did not acknowledge that it was God that was doing it. They did not sanctify him the way that they should, and so they would suffer the consequences. We also had the account, and I may not have all these in order as I'm just going through my memory, but we have the accounts. They've had a battle with the Og, the king of Bashan. They have had Aaron's death, and the mantle of the high priest has passed to Eleazar, who is his son, and that's continuing on. They've also murmured and had the fiery serpents in the wilderness. They're murmuring and so. How many times do you think? We don't have every account, so you don't have to give me a number, obviously. But do you think that there's a pattern with Israel that they murmured for 40 years, or do you think they murmured in the first two and then murmured in the last one? You think for 37 years in between they were just all great? No, there's a pattern here, you see. They left Sinai. At Sinai, you remember all that they did with constructing the tabernacle and the items and all the money they gave. Everything that they did to make that happen, they did so well with, and then as soon as they start traveling again, it all falls apart, right? And that happens for the whole thing. But the thing is, by the time you get to the 40th year, we don't know the number, But you have to recognize by the end of the 40th year, a great majority of those people who were going to die in the wilderness have already died, right? It's not like they lived for 38 more years and then all of them died in the 40th year. So that's been happening for a long time. That would tend to make it a greater struggle. Time would also make it a greater struggle, right? I mean, what have you worked on for 40 years? I mean, in our society today, just driving across state's a long time, right? Okay, so you can see the challenges. But as we get into the account tonight, they're getting close. They've tried twice to find a path to the promised land, and they've been refused. And they've had a couple battles. And that information is going ahead of them. And that's what God actually told them. He told them beforehand, he said, I'll be with you. You do what I ask you to do. I'll be with you. My fear will go before you. And we get to the account at Jericho when the spies go in, and we have Rahab, and that's what she tells the spies, we've been afraid of you because we heard what's happening. Well, this account tonight actually is before that, and the character in this account's already heard too. So we're dealing tonight with the account of Balaam and Balak. And I want to point one thing out before we start reading. Balaam is the character that is connected to God, and Balak is the king. Now, the reason I want to highlight the fact that Balaam is connected to God is because Balaam is not a descendant of Jacob. Try again. Now it's working. I didn't move. Well, that just threw me right off. Balaam is not, you remember, who was Jethro? Do you remember who Jethro was? Moses' father-in-law. Was he also called the priest of Midian? But he wasn't a descendant of Jacob, was he? Okay, so I'm pointing that out to say that while God was making this nation, he was forming these people into a nation and giving them a law, the old covenant, there were people around that God was speaking through and using. Okay, and this Balaam is evidently one of those characters. We don't know a whole lot about him. He just shows up on the scene, but we know that he has a connection to God because of what's said about him and because of what God does for him. But what we also know is he's weak. He's going to fail. Not probably in our account tonight, but he is going to fail. Okay, Numbers chapter 22. Then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plains of Moab on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. Does anybody know where that is? I don't mean geographically. I mean, anything happen around that area that you would know is coming up? That should have been an easy clue. Yeah, the battle, right? The first battle in the land is the Battle of Jericho, right? So they have tried to go up from the south, and it hasn't worked, so they've gone all the way around again now. They've just kind of been wandering back and forth. They've gone all the way around, and they're at the area of the Dead Sea, or close to it, and just close to where they're going to be when they cross with Joshua and when they fight that battle. So they're really getting close to the end of this journey. Now Balak the son of Zippor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. So Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this company will lick up all that is around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was king of the Moabites at that time. Now I want to stop and talk about that. Has there ever been a time in your life where you lost sleep because of what was supposed to happen tomorrow? Has there ever been a time in your life where let me back up and start that over again. Has there been a time where you have lost sleep over something that was going to happen tomorrow, and then when it happened tomorrow, it really wasn't that big of a deal? I saw a meme. I may have already told you about this, but I'm going to remember this one, so you'll probably hear it a bunch more times. A meme several months ago in which what it said was, to this point in my life, I have survived 100% of my bad days. And that's true, isn't it? And yet, isn't that what we fear? I mean, when you're afraid of going to the doctor, what are you afraid of? You're afraid of the doctor, or are you afraid of maybe the test, or maybe the surgery, or maybe, is that not what you're afraid of? You're not actually afraid of the doctor, are you? No. If it's that you got to take, are you afraid of the test, or are you afraid of how you'll do on it? Yeah. Yeah, if you're having a problem in your family, or you're afraid of your family, or you're afraid of the actions. Yeah, and the thing is, most of the things that we fear like that, we have magnified to the place to where they're not actually what we're seeing in our minds. How many times when you were a kid, maybe even now, when I was a kid, sometimes you had a house that had a basement. Some of our family members did. And it was a very comfortable place when there was a tornado siren going off. But when somebody sent you down there to get something and it wasn't stormy and it was nighttime, wasn't the best place to go. It was because the basement was scary. It's because of what you made in your mind. It's what you invented in your mind that was worse than what was actually down there, right? Nobody ever got me in the basement. No snake ever got me in the basement. If you had a basement tomorrow, you'd go down there and you'd think, well, there's probably a snake down here. Terry said that. Okay, I bring all that up because of this. I think that's the way it works with us spiritually too, and I think this account picks that out. We worry about things that we beat, not because of our own ability, but because of what God has done. How many times do we hang on to our failures when God's already forgiven them? I think one of the greatest hindrances to Christianity for far too many people today is that we drag things along with us that God's already got rid of. And I think that's the point of Hebrews 11 and 12, when Hebrews 11 talks about faith and all these people that did this by faith and did this by faith. And then you get to chapter 12 and verse 1, and he says this great cloud of witnesses, which is all the people in chapter 11, tell us and teach us, quit dragging the weight with you. Get rid of that weight that you're dragging with you, that faithlessness. Faith is saying that I believe that what God said really happened. And so when he says your sins are forgiven, I believe that. And if I believe that, I act on that, right? Instead of building all this up. So what we have here with Balak is you have Israel, and they've been out here in this wilderness for 40 years, right? And they've had, Patrick pointed this out last week, they've had a couple battles, right? But have they instigated any of them? Actually, they tried to instigate one. They tried to instigate the one when God told them to go back out in the wilderness. They said, no, we'll go to battle now. And they lost it. No, when they fought, it's been others have attacked them. So here's what God's plan is for them to pass through the area of Midian, cross over the Jordan River, and then they're going to go to battle, right? What the Midianites see is here is all these people, and what they're going to come in is they're going to move in next to us, and they're going to destroy everything. They're going to take everything. What did they say to the Edomites when they said, let us pass through? What did they say?
We'll stay on the road.
We'll stay on the road. Won't take any of your food, any of your water, any of your animals, right? Yes, so they've made something up. The Midianites have developed this fear in their mind that doesn't even exist. They haven't done any of the things that the Midianites are afraid that Israel's going to do. And so they are instigating something that's going to turn out bad. So here's Israel, here's Midian. Keep reading. He sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor at Pethor, which is near the river, in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth and are settling next to me. I wonder what the significance is to the fact that he says they came from Egypt. The Egyptians are pretty much the world power of the time, aren't they? So he's kind of insinuating that they come with Egypt's power, isn't he? Yeah. Isn't that how we do it? Have you ever had somebody tell you about an event that happened, and then somebody else tell you about the event that happened, and they were completely different stories? Because one of them had seen and built it up from his lenses, and they were different than somebody else's lenses. Keep going. Therefore, please come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land, for I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. Now, what we've learned there is something about Balaam. Balak knows that this guy has the ability to evidently speak for God. Now, he doesn't evidently acknowledge Balaam's God. I know that because he didn't go to God. But what he sees is kind of like a voodoo doctor or something from the world's perspective. Somebody that says, hey, if you say something bad on these people, well, I know from evidence that something bad's going to happen. And I know if you say something good on somebody, then something good's going to happen. So what I've got these invaders from Egypt coming in, and they're going to take over the land. And what I want you to do is come in here and drive them out, or at least curse them so that I can drive them out. Because I can't do it without you. Okay, keep reading. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the diviner's fee. Diviner's fee, they're going to pay him in their hand. And they came to Balaam and spoke to him the words of Balak. And he said to them, lodge here tonight, and I will bring back word to you as the Lord speaks to me. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. Now, I find it difficult at times when I know the end of the account to be honest with the early part of the account. I know the end of the account, and this is something that Patrick brought up last week. I know the end of the account is Balaam's going to figure out a way around God. And he's going to figure out a way to get these blessings from Balak, and he's going to figure out a way to get God to curse Israel. Okay? So I know his failures. I know when you get to the New Testament, when you read about Balaam, he's an example of somebody who gave up and lost his position. Lost his position with God. A cursed individual. So I know where he ends up. So when I look at the beginning of this, it's really easy to look at it through that lens of the end of the account and think, oh, this guy's really bad. Look at him. He's letting these strangers come in. But to this point, I want you to recognize he's done the right thing. They have shown up and said, you know, do you think that God sent word to everybody up around Canaan that Israel's coming? When Moses was on Mount Sinai and God said, I want you to go back into Egypt and tell Pharaoh, let my people go, did God say, I want you to go all around Canaan and tell people that Israel's coming? No, he didn't. And there wasn't 24-hour news sources so everybody could keep up with all this so they knew what was coming, right? So all of this is, my point is, I don't believe that Balaam knows anything about what's happening here, but I do believe that he has worked with God enough through this prophecy that he's been practicing, that he knows that when these people show up and say, hey, there's danger out here, they're from Egypt, I want you to curse them, he knows that the only thing he can do is what? Go ask God. So it's not of his own strength. He knows what's happening is not his own, right? When Balak says, you curse people and they're cursed, you bless them and they're blessed, Balaam didn't say, yeah, you're right, I'm a pretty good guy. I'm pretty powerful, did he? He knows where this all comes from. It comes from God. So he starts in a good place. That's important because I think it's easy for us to get a place, even in our spirituality, where we think we're connected to God and so we can't fail. Keep going. Then God came to Balaam and said, who are these men with you? Do you think God didn't know? Did he know when he showed up in the garden and said, why were you hiding, Adam? Did he know? Yeah, when he showed up to Cain and said, where's your brother Abel? Did he know? Does he know who these people are? Yeah. What he's doing is he's getting Balaam to think about who they are. Who are these people? Balaam said to God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, look, a people has come out of Egypt, and they cover the face of the earth. Come now, curse them from me. Perhaps I shall be able to overpower them and drive them out. So he's clearly stated to God the issue, right? Okay, so what's the result? God said to Balaam, you shall not go with them. Wait a second. Did he start with the cursing? What did he start with? Huh? Don't even go? Why do you suppose that's the case? Remember? Here's the account I would use. Joseph. He is sold by his brothers. He is a slave in Egypt, right? He works his way up to in command of Potiphar's house, right? In that house is Potiphar's wife, and she tempts him. Day after day after day, she tempts him. Finally, the day that he gets accused is the day he actually runs out of his coat, out of the house. Why does he run? Is he scared of her? He runs because you don't stay near the temptation. You got to get away. I think that's what God's saying to Balaam here. Don't even go. He's going to tell him next. The sentence wasn't done. He's going to tell him next, don't curse these people. But what he starts with is, don't even go with them. Because the problem is, if you go with them, you stretch just a little bit, you go just a little bit closer to the temptation, and what happens? You're closer to failure, aren't you? So don't even go with them. Okay. So go back and look at it again. You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you. Does he understand? Yes, he understands. He knew exactly what God said to do. These people are blessed. I don't see an explanation from God as to why. I don't see him saying, okay, these are the descendants of Joseph. I'm going to give them this land. I'm going to bless them, and eventually I don't see any of the explanation. All I see is God saying, you're not going with them because these people are blessed, and I'm not going to send you down there to curse them. And he gets it. Okay. And the princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. Then Balak again sent princes more numerous and more honorable than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, thus says Balak the son of Zippor, please let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will certainly honor you greatly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Therefore, please come, curse this people for me. Okay. What's his reason for not going the first time? God said no. So Balak, just like Satan does. Remember when Jesus, right after his baptism by John, and he's out in the wilderness for 40 days, fasting, and the temptations are occurring, and at the end of it, the text tells us that the devil left him for a season. So he didn't throw up his hands and quit, did he? He was going to come back, wasn't he? Did he come back? Yeah. Yeah, he came back a lot, but he came back with a vengeance at the end, didn't he? Okay, so Balaam says, God tells me I'm not going with you and I'm not going to curse them. You just well go home. And they go home. And so Balak, just like the devil, says, okay, well, I'll up the ante a little bit. And he sends back the next group. Only these aren't the regular guys. These are the princes. These are the honorable. This is the cabinet. This is the king's best men. And they show up and they have money and gifts. And they have honor. And their statement from Balak, the only thing he could have done more than this is go himself, right? So their message from Balak is, don't let anything keep you from coming, because I will honor you and I will reward you. And if you notice there, I don't think he's connecting that to the cursing. I think he's asking him, just come a little closer, because what happens when he does go is, he says, let me just show you. Let me just show you this people. And then he'll change it and say, okay, let me just show you a part of the people. Let me just show you from a distance. See, he's just trying. It's not like he says, okay, you're wrong, you need to curse the people. No, he says, just come on over here. I'll honor you. I'll pay you well. I'll reward you. And I want to show you what's happening here. And now Balaam fails. Why? God's first advice was don't go.
He didn't say don't curse them, etc.
Yep.
They asked him to come. So God was actually addressing
Where they're going first, right.
Yeah.
But why would he go now when he wouldn't go the first time? We haven't read that he's going, but he's going to go. Why would he go now?
Because God allowed him to go. To have his own.
I'm saying from his perspective. What would cause? Yeah. When you've had time to think about it, and well, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So the first time, these guys just show up, and sure, they've got some reward and honor, but they just show up, and they say, come with us, and he says, spend the night, and the first thing the next morning, he says, I'm not going with you. Okay? But now they have traveled back to Balak, and that's time, and Balak has sent people back again, and that's time, and now they have these more gifts. Do you think that maybe Balaam has had time to think about the honor? You think maybe he's had time to dwell on the fact of, I could live a pretty good life if I had said yes. So he's dwelt on this a little bit. Also, an ego comes into play here because it's nice to be honored, isn't it? And the reason I believe all of this is because if he hasn't changed his thinking, he would just say to these people the exact same thing that he said when he sent them home the first time, which is God's already said no, right? So let's see what he says. Verse 17. 18. Then Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. Now therefore, please you also stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. So he starts off okay and saying, look, I can only do what God tells me to do, but you know what? Maybe God changed his mind. You brought me more money. Maybe God changed his mind. Do you see how his thinking has changed? God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do. So Balaam rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princess of Moab. Now I'm going to stop there. Next thing we're going to read is God gets mad at him for going. And I want to ask the question, how could God come to him this night and tell him to go tomorrow with him and then get mad at him for going?
He's going to allow him to use his own will
And that's true.
like he does today.
That's true, and you're connecting to what I want to say. It's all about Balaam's will. Balaam's already made up his mind. He doesn't let these people spend the night to go talk to God again. If he hadn't already made up his mind, he's wanting God to change his mind. Did you know we do that? Did you know that you go to the Bible and I go to the Bible, or you go to the preacher, and sometimes I go to preachers or elders or whatever, and we look for the answers that we already want to hear? Isn't that what you did or even do when your husband makes you mad or your wife makes you mad? You call your friends about it, or you whatever you do with them. Aren't you calling them because you want them to tell you how bad your wife is? Or your husband is, right? What if you call them and say, you know what? My husband was so mean to me today. Some of the things he said were so mean, and your friend said, well, you probably deserved it. You going to call them next time? Because they didn't give you what you wanted to hear, right? Okay? Balaam has already made up his mind. He wants God to tell him what he wants to do, and now God says, all right. Does the text of Scripture tell us that there's a time where God will allow you to believe the lie?
Yeah.
Do people go to the Bible to prove what they already believe?
No.
Keep reading. God's anger was aroused because he went. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. He was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back into the road. So he starts the journey, and God's mad because he knows what's in Balaam's heart. And so he's mad, and so he's riding this donkey down the field, and the angel of the Lord is in front of him to kill him, and the donkey sees the angel of the Lord. For whatever reason, this is a lesson that God's trying to teach Balaam. So God allows this donkey to see the angel of the Lord, and of course he's not going to go, up to something like that and be killed. So he just turns off, and Balaam beats her. It's a her. Balaam beats her, right? Okay, keep going. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards, with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, and he struck her again. So next time she can't just turn off into the field. So she tries to get over to the side, and it hurts his foot. So what's he do? He beats her again, okay? Then the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn, either to the right hand or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, I've got to stop there. Okay, so the third time, there's nowhere to go, so she just lays down the road. Donkeys can be stubborn, right? Isn't that what they're known for? Strength and stubbornness. So she just kind of sits down the road, and he beats her again, and the donkey talks to him. I cannot even begin to imagine what goes through your mind when all of a sudden your donkey starts talking to you. But here's what I do know. How stubborn do you have to be to think that means it's time to have an argument? You know, if the donkey talk, it just blows my mind. The donkey says, hey, what have I done that caused you to do this? And he says, well, I'll tell you what you've done. Can you even rationalize that? And do you now recognize just how far we'll go when we make up our mind to do what we're going to do no matter what God says? And maybe we don't argue with the donkey we're riding. Maybe we argue with the donkey that we are, because we want to do what we want to do anyway. We look for somebody to tell us it's okay. I think some of the devil's greatest work is the division that exists in the religious world today, where I can decide what I want to believe, and then all I have to do is go look for it, and somebody will tell me it's okay. And then I can go along through life believing that everything is great, and that I love God, and that I love His Word, and the end result's going to be heaven, when in fact, I have, because of my stubbornness, placed myself in a position where all I've done is feel good about things here, because I'm blind. Balaam was blind. He had no idea what was standing there in front of him. He had no idea what was coming. The donkey did. And the donkey says, why have you struck me? And here's Balaam's response. I want you to see just how irrational he was, as if talking to the donkey wasn't irrational enough. Balaam said to the donkey, because you have abused me, that word is actually mocked. Because you have mocked me. How do you argue that with a donkey? You've mocked me by not doing what I tell you to do. Wow. Because you've abused me or mocked me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you. That's an angry guy. So the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you? And he said no. He's losing the argument with the donkey. The donkey says, look, I've been your donkey from the very beginning. I've always done what you asked me to do. It's hard to get through this because it's such a humorous picture in my mind. And he says, no, you haven't ever mistreated me. Okay. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I've come out to stand against you, because your way is perverse before me, or contrary against me. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely I would also have killed you by now and let her live. And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displeases you, I will turn back. And then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but only the word that I speak to you, that you shall speak. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. So all of a sudden, Balaam's eyes are open, and he sees this messenger, and now he's not arguing with the donkey anymore, is he? Now he's talking, and this messenger from God, the angel of the Lord, says, that donkey just saved your life. You'd already be dead. You would already be dead 3 times. He would have already been killed 3 different times, if it were possible to be killed 3 times. 3 different times he could have been killed, or would have if the donkey had kept going. So this donkey that he's beaten 3 times has saved his life. He's angry with. I can make so many points from this. How many times have people tried to tell you the truth and you got angry at them? You said something angry to them. How many times have you told somebody in your family the truth only to have them get angry, persecute you, shut you out? You trying to win an argument? You're trying to save your life. The donkey's trying to save his life. Now, I want to point something out. At the end of what we just read, God told him, go ahead and go. But he said, only speak what I tell you to speak. Isn't that what Balaam said he was supposed to do in the first place? So does that not tell you he was thinking differently this time? God didn't have to tell him that again if he hadn't changed his mind, does he? So he's in danger here because he's changed his mind. God's angry with him because he's going on this journey, and on this journey he's going for the purpose of getting this money and getting this honor, and he's going to do whatever he has to do to get it. God knows his heart already. Now here's a question. Couldn't the angel of the Lord just killed him without standing in the road and scaring the donkey? Couldn't he have just killed him? Why didn't he?
Human lesson.
For him and for us.
There's
Yeah.
consequences for your actions.
Yeah. And there's a merciful God that's trying not to have us have to face those consequences. And by the way, there's a difference between mercy and grace. Did you know that? Grace is when God blesses us with those things that we do not deserve. Mercy is when we do not receive the things that we do deserve. He deserves to die, doesn't he? Because the consequence of sin is death. So God's mercy, that changes this account. This guy is on his way to curse the descendants of Jacob that God has promised will possess this land. He's trying to beat God's plan. He doesn't know that, but that's what he's trying to do. And what happened is he almost lost his life. So God says, go with him. And here's what you do. When you get there, I'm going to tell you what to say, and that's the only thing that you're going to say. Now, here's something I don't have the answer to, and I'm going to stop because we're supposed to quit at 7:45. I'm going to stop with this, but I'm going to ask a question that I do not have the answer to. Where are the princes of Balak when this happens? Isn't that who he's journeying with? What about his two servants? Where are they? I wonder, again, I don't have the answer. This is just something that I wonder about. I wonder if any of them saw this and if they did what they thought. What would you think? I get it already. I've talked about it. If my donkey starts talking to me, I may be stubborn, but I'm not going to argue with it. But I got news for you. If I'm out with you and your donkey starts talking to you, I'm not staying.
Don't be hard on Cheryl.
Yeah, yeah. I just wonder, what were these other people thinking? I know the account of Saul, when he's going to bring those Christians back and the light shines around him and they can hear a voice, but they don't know what he's saying, right? That conversation that Saul has with Jesus. They don't know. I wonder if maybe something like that happened. I don't have an answer. I just want to give you something to wonder about for the next few days, and then we'll pick up again there next week. Yes. I do remember Mr. Ed. Yeah. Yeah. I also, yeah, I've seen an old, I think there's an old Don Knotts movie that has a talking horse or something in it. So, yeah. Okay. You see what I was talking about a while ago about when people start asking questions in class? You don't know where they're going to go. Okay, let's close with a prayer, and then we'll pick up there next week. Father, we're so thankful to be here tonight, and we're so thankful for your continuous blessings, and we're thankful, Father, tonight for your mercy and your patience, and we pray that we will not take that for granted, that we'll recognize how good you are to us, and we will seek to grow closer to you and to honor you in a greater way every day of our lives. Help us, Father, to always to gain our strength and to put our trust in you and not in ourselves. Forgive us where we fail you. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, hang on just one second. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. What am I supposed to say? There is a baby shower Saturday at 2 o'clock for Sheena Sink. Wear masks. Practice social distancing here in the fellowship hall. Do you need to know who's coming? Okay. Thank you.